The restaurant was alive with soft music and the quiet chatter of people who had come to enjoy an elegant evening. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting gentle light over the polished tables. The scent of fresh flowers and warm bread filled the air. Waiters moved quickly and carefully between tables, carrying trays full of food and drinks. Among them was the young waitress, quietly working, carrying a tray of sparkling glasses with steady hands. She wore a simple uniform, and her hair was tied back neatly. She had been working here for years, and though she was polite and diligent, most of the guests hardly noticed her. They saw her as part of the background, just another person doing a job. She smiled softly at a family at one of the corner tables, pouring juice into the little children's cups. Her eyes followed the guests as they laughed at some private joke, oblivious to the small acts of kindness happening right in front of them. No one expected much from her. Most of the guests were used to seeing grand performers, artists and musicians entertaining them, and the idea that a quiet waitress could be more than what she seemed never crossed their minds. Behind the kitchen doors, the staff were busy preparing the next set of dishes. The sound of sizzling pans and clanging pots added a rhythm to the busy restaurant. The young waitress moved smoothly among the chaos, taking orders, refilling drinks, and wiping tables with practiced precision. She knew how to be invisible when needed and how to step forward when necessary. But tonight, she had no idea that her life was about to change in a way she could never have imagined. It started with a small announcement. The head manager, a tall man in a sharp suit, stepped onto a small stage at the corner of the room. He tapped the microphone gently, and the room quieted, waiting to hear what he would say. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice polite but a little tense, "we had a special performance scheduled tonight, but unfortunately, our pianist will not be able to join us. We apologize for the change in plans." There were murmurs of disappointment. Guests who had looked forward to the music frowned slightly. Some whispered to their neighbors, wondering who could possibly replace the missing pianist. A few of them laughed lightly, as if to ease the sudden disappointment. The manager hesitated, glancing around. Then, in a joking tone, he said, "Well, perhaps our lovely waitress here might like to try her hand at the piano." He pointed toward the young woman who had just finished refilling a table's water glasses. The guests laughed at the idea, some more openly than others, thinking it was just a fun joke. The young waitress froze for a moment. Her heart began to race. She had played the piano since she was a child, but she had never imagined performing in front of a room full of people like this. She looked down at her hands, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. The laughter around her grew louder. She could hear some guests whispering, "This will be funny," and "She's just a waitress, what can she do?" Her cheeks flushed, but deep down, she felt a spark of determination. She took a deep breath and nodded gently, acknowledging the manager. Even though everyone thought this was a joke, she decided to step forward. She walked toward the piano with quiet steps, each one feeling heavier than the last. The grand piano stood gleaming under the lights. Its black surface reflected the faces of the guests who were still laughing softly. The waitress lifted the cover and sat down, adjusting the bench carefully. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool touch of the ivory. The room was quiet now, the laughter fading as curiosity took over. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Some guests leaned forward in their chairs, expecting a short, awkward performance, while others simply smiled at the unexpected moment. She closed her eyes for a brief second and remembered the countless hours she had spent playing alone in her room, practicing scales and songs that she loved. Music had always been her escape, her way of expressing what words could not. And now, without anyone knowing, she was ready to share that part of herself with the world. Her fingers hovered above the keys, then slowly, she pressed down. The first notes filled the room, soft and gentle. There was a sudden pause among the guests, as they realized the music was not ordinary. It was beautiful, delicate, and full of emotion. The waitress began to play more confidently. Each note flowed naturally into the next, creating a melody that seemed to tell a story. The guests stopped whispering. The room fell silent, and all eyes were on her. Some leaned closer, almost holding their breath. The laughter that had filled the air just moments ago was gone. In its place was awe, wonder, and an unspoken respect. The music seemed to wrap around the room, filling every corner with a feeling that was both calming and electrifying. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the audience, the laughter, and even herself for a moment. Her fingers moved with precision and passion, bringing life to every note. The guests, who had underestimated her, were now completely captivated. A woman at one of the tables covered her mouth in surprise. A man who had been laughing earlier shook his head, unable to believe what he was hearing. Even the manager, who had suggested the joke, watched with wide eyes, astonished by the skill and emotion pouring from the young waitress. As the melody reached its peak, some guests began to clap softly, unsure if they should interrupt or not. The music continued, stronger and more powerful, until the final notes lingered in the air. There was a brief silence, and then the room erupted in applause. The young waitress sat still for a moment, catching her breath, a small, shy smile on her face. She had done it. She had turned a moment of ridicule into a moment of triumph. The applause grew louder as more guests joined in, cheering and clapping for the unexpected performer. People approached her, complimenting her talent, some even asking if she was a professional musician. The manager came over, visibly impressed, and apologized for doubting her. The young waitress felt a mixture of relief and pride. For the first time, she was seen not just as a waitress, but as someone with remarkable talent. After the performance, the guests lingered at their tables, talking excitedly about what they had just witnessed. Many said it was the best part of the evening, and some even took photos and videos to remember the moment. The young waitress returned to her duties, but now, her every step was met with smiles, nods, and quiet words of admiration. The evening continued, but something had changed. She had transformed in the eyes of everyone in the room, and more importantly, she had transformed herself. By the end of the night, the young waitress reflected on what had happened. She realized that talent could shine in the most unexpected places, and courage could turn moments of doubt into opportunities for greatness. The experience gave her a new sense of confidence, a belief that her abilities mattered, and that even when people laughed at her, she could still prove her worth. It was a night she would never forget, a night that marked the beginning of a journey filled with possibility and hope. The morning after her performance, the young waitress arrived at the restaurant feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of last night's applause still lingered in her mind. She walked through the doors and noticed the subtle change in the atmosphere. Guests and staff alike looked at her with curiosity and newfound respect. Some smiled warmly as she passed by, while others nodded in quiet acknowledgement. She felt proud, yet a little overwhelmed by all the attention. Her coworkers whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. A fellow waitress, who had often been competitive, approached with a smile. "I didn't know you could play like that," she said softly. The young waitress smiled and shrugged modestly, feeling a bit shy. She had never played to gain attention or approval. Music had always been something personal, something that gave her joy and comfort. Now it seemed that joy had touched the hearts of many others. The manager came over, this time with a genuine smile. "We need to talk," he said, motioning for her to follow him to a quiet corner. She wondered what he wanted to say. Was it another joke? But the seriousness in his expression told her otherwise. Once they were alone, he spoke kindly. "Last night was extraordinary. I don't know how to thank you. You've turned what could have been a disappointing evening into something unforgettable. I want to offer you a chance to perform more often. Our guests loved it, and I think it could be a wonderful addition to our events." She listened in surprise, feeling a mix of excitement and disbelief. She had never imagined that her music could lead to opportunities like this. As she returned to her duties, she noticed that the guests who had been present the night before were still talking about her performance. Some mentioned her to other diners, sharing stories of how the quiet waitress had stolen the show. People who had once overlooked her were now curious and eager to see what else she could do. The young waitress moved carefully, mindful of the attention, but also feeling a sense of pride and confidence growing within her. During the day, she found herself stealing moments to think about the possibilities. Could she really perform regularly? Could she let the world see the part of herself that had always been hidden? The thought both thrilled and frightened her. She had always lived in the shadows, unnoticed, carrying out her responsibilities quietly. Now the world seemed to be opening up to her, inviting her to step into a new light. Later, as the evening approached, the restaurant prepared for a busy night. The young waitress had been asked to perform once again, this time with more attention and anticipation. The pianist's replacement was confirmed to be her. She felt nervous, but she also felt a deep sense of purpose. She practiced quietly in the empty dining area before the guests arrived, her fingers dancing over the keys, each note building her confidence. When the guests began to arrive, she noticed the difference immediately. There was a buzz of excitement in the air, as if people could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Some of the regular patrons whispered to each other, curious to see how the young waitress would perform this time. The laughter and dismissive whispers of the past night had disappeared, replaced by anticipation and respect. The manager approached her with a reassuring smile. Remember, just be yourself. The guests loved your music last night, and they will again, he said. She nodded, feeling gratitude for his support. She took a deep breath, walked toward the piano and sat down. Her hands hovered above the keys, and she closed her eyes briefly, letting herself focus on the music. The first notes flowed, soft and gentle, filling the room with a warmth that made everyone stop and listen. As she played, the guests were captivated. They leaned forward, unable to look away, each person feeling the emotion and skill behind every note. Some who had doubted her now realized the depth of her talent. The melody was delicate yet powerful, each chord telling a story of resilience, hope, and beauty. The young waitress was no longer just a performer. She had become the heart of the evening, the center of attention in a way that felt natural and unforced. Throughout her performance, she noticed subtle changes in the crowd. A child watched her with wide eyes, inspired by the confidence she showed. An elderly couple held hands, smiling as the music reminded them of long-forgotten memories. Even the skeptical guests, who had doubted her the night before, were now completely absorbed. The music had a way of touching everyone, making them pause and reflect, creating a shared experience that went beyond simple entertainment. By the end of the evening, the applause was even louder than before. The young waitress felt a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. She realized that her courage to step forward had not only changed the way others saw her, but it had also changed how she saw herself. She had discovered a strength and talent that had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to shine. After the performance, several guests approached her, offering compliments and encouragement. Some asked if she had considered pursuing music professionally. She smiled, feeling both shy and proud. It was a new world opening before her, a world where her abilities could be recognized and appreciated. The manager again expressed his admiration, and this time, he suggested that she consider performing at more high-profile events, not just within the restaurant. The young waitress returned to her table duties with a sense of purpose. Each interaction with guests now carried a little more confidence, a little more pride. She realized that talent and courage could break barriers and change perceptions. People who had laughed at her were now among the first to celebrate her success. It was a powerful lesson about the impact of believing in oneself, even when others doubt or underestimate you. As the night wound down, she took a moment to sit quietly in the corner of the empty dining room. The piano stood near her, a symbol of the journey she had begun. She reflected on the events of the past 2 days and realized how much her life had changed in such a short time. What had begun as a simple act of courage had become the start of something much larger. She felt inspired to continue pursuing her music, to embrace opportunities, and to share her gift with the world. The experience also taught her the importance of patience and humility. While the applause and recognition were rewarding, it was the connection through music that mattered most. Every note she played created a bond between her and the listeners, a moment of shared humanity that transcended status, wealth, and expectation. She knew that this was only the beginning, and she was eager to see where her talent and determination would take her next. By the time she left the restaurant that night, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The future seemed full of promise and possibility. She had taken a chance, faced the laughter and doubt of others, and emerged stronger, more confident, and more determined. Her journey was just beginning, but already, she had learned that when courage meets talent, amazing things can happen. The following week, the young waitress found herself facing an unexpected opportunity. The restaurant had announced a special event for high-profile guests, and she had been asked to perform as the main attraction. The thought made her nervous, yet a sense of excitement bubbled inside her. She knew this was her chance to show not only the restaurant but also the world that her talent was real and extraordinary. She practiced in her small apartment during the day, running her fingers over the piano keys late into the night, feeling the music come alive under her touch. On the evening of the event, the restaurant was decorated more beautifully than ever before. Soft lights hung around the room, casting a warm glow over the elegantly set tables. The air was filled with the rich scent of food and flowers, and the sound of quiet conversations created a soft hum of anticipation. The young waitress moved through the room, taking orders and checking on guests, but every now and then, her eyes flicked to the grand piano at the center of the stage. She felt a mixture of anxiety and eagerness. This night was different. The audience would be more discerning, and the stakes felt higher. As the event began, the manager came to her with a reassuring smile. "You've got this. Just be yourself," he said softly. She nodded, taking a deep breath, and stepped toward the piano. The guests were already seated, chatting and sipping wine, unaware of the surprise that awaited them. As she sat down and placed her fingers on the keys, a hush fell over the room. Some guests were curious, others skeptical, but all of them were paying attention. She closed her eyes and let the first notes escape. The melody was gentle at first, weaving through the room like a soft breeze. Slowly, it grew richer and more expressive. Each chord carried emotion, telling a story without words. The guests stopped their conversations, listening intently as the music filled every corner of the room. Her hands moved effortlessly, guided by years of practice and an innate connection to the piano. The young waitress felt herself lost in the music. She was no longer just performing. She was communicating her deepest feelings, sharing a part of her soul with everyone in the room. The audience could sense it. Some leaned forward, their eyes wide with wonder. Others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Even the skeptics, who had once doubted her, were now captivated. The sound of the piano seemed to transform the room, turning ordinary tables and chairs into a stage for an unforgettable experience. As she played, memories of her past filled her mind. She remembered the times when no one noticed her talent, the moments of doubt, and the laughter that once tried to diminish her confidence. But now she felt a sense of triumph. She had turned those moments into motivation, letting her music speak louder than words. Each note became a statement of perseverance, a proof that talent could not be hidden forever. Guests began to whisper among themselves, amazed at the skill and emotion they were witnessing. Some had expected a simple performance, perhaps a few notes played nervously by a waitress stepping into unfamiliar territory. Instead, they were experiencing a masterful display of musical artistry. The young woman's presence was magnetic. She drew everyone's attention without even trying, letting her music do all the work. A few moments into the performance, a well-known food critic attending the event put down her pen, captivated by the unexpected beauty of the music. Another guest, a wealthy patron with a love for the arts, leaned toward his companion and whispered, "I never imagined someone so humble could play with such passion." The young waitress continued, her fingers gliding over the keys with precision and grace. The music swelled, rising to a crescendo that filled the room with energy, and then softened again, leaving the listeners in awe of the contrast and emotion she had created. The young waitress noticed subtle reactions from the audience. A young girl clutched her mother's hand, eyes wide with amazement. An elderly man smiled quietly, reminiscing about music from his youth. Even the staff, who had watched from the sidelines, were mesmerized. She realized that music had the power to connect people, to create a shared experience that transcended age, background, and expectation. In that moment, she felt a deep sense of purpose, understanding that her gift was not just for herself but for the joy and inspiration of others. The performance continued, each piece flowing seamlessly into the next. She played with confidence, letting the rhythm and melody guide her. The guests remained silent, captivated, hanging on to every note. Some even wiped away small tears, moved by the beauty and emotion in her playing. She had become more than a waitress for the evening. She was a storyteller, using her piano to weave tales that resonated with everyone who listened. As the final notes echoed through the room, there was a brief pause, as if everyone was holding their breath, reluctant to break the spell. Then, the applause erupted, loud and enthusiastic. Guests rose from their chairs, clapping and cheering, some even whistling in admiration. The young waitress felt her heart swell with joy and gratitude. She had transformed a night that began like any other into a moment of magic, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The manager approached her again, his face beaming with pride. "You were incredible," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "Everyone is talking about you. This could be the start of something amazing." She smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and excitement. The recognition was new to her, yet it felt natural, like a reward for years of quiet dedication and practice. After the performance, several guests came to speak with her personally. They praised her skill, asked questions about her musical background, and encouraged her to consider pursuing professional opportunities. A few even suggested introductions to people in the music industry, seeing the potential for a career that could take her far beyond the restaurant. She listened politely, feeling a combination of humility and exhilaration. The world seemed to be opening up to her, offering possibilities she had never imagined. Back in the kitchen, her co-workers were buzzing with excitement, congratulating her on a performance that had exceeded everyone's expectations. She felt a sense of belonging and pride, realizing that she had not only impressed the guests but also inspired those around her. The atmosphere in the restaurant had changed. She was no longer just a waitress going unnoticed. She was someone who had made an impact, someone whose talent and courage could no longer be ignored. As the night wound down, the young waitress took a quiet moment alone, sitting by the piano and reflecting on the events of the evening. She thought about how far she had come, from practicing in secret to performing in front of an audience that now respected and admired her. She realized that her journey was only beginning, and that the courage to step forward, even in the face of doubt and laughter, had opened doors she had never dared to imagine. She left the restaurant that night with a sense of purpose and possibility. The experience had shown her that talent, when combined with determination and courage, could change perceptions and create opportunities. She had faced skepticism and emerged stronger, proving to herself and others that she was capable of greatness. The memory of the applause, the smiles, and the admiration of the guests would stay with her, inspiring her to continue sharing her music and embracing every opportunity that came her way. As she walked home, she thought about the future. There were challenges ahead, no doubt, but she felt ready to face them. She knew that her music could touch hearts, change moods, and even change lives. And most importantly, she knew that she could believe in herself, no matter what others thought. The young waitress had discovered a truth that would guide her for years to come. When you embrace your talent and share it with the world, incredible things can happen. The young waitress arrived at the restaurant the next day with a mixture of anticipation and determination. Word of her performance had spread quickly, and she could feel the difference in the atmosphere as soon as she stepped inside. Guests who had never noticed her before now greeted her with warm smiles, some nodding in recognition, and a few even asking when she would play again. The staff buzzed with excitement, whispering about how the quiet waitress had become the star of the restaurant. She smiled politely, feeling a quiet pride, yet she knew that she had to stay focused and humble. The manager approached her with a friendly look. "We have a special booking tonight," he said. "A group of art enthusiasts and music lovers. They've heard about you and are excited to see your performance." She felt a wave of nervousness. This audience would be different from the last. They were knowledgeable and discerning. But she also felt ready. The weeks of practice and the previous performances had strengthened her confidence. She knew she could do this. As she prepared for the evening, she noticed a few familiar faces in the restaurant. Some guests who had been skeptical before were now watching her with interest. She carried out her duties, setting tables and serving drinks, but her mind was focused on the piano waiting for her. When it was finally time, the manager gave her a reassuring nod, and she walked to the grand piano at the center of the room. The lights reflected softly off its polished surface, and she took a deep breath, feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation. The room fell quiet as she sat down, and her fingers rested gently on the keys. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the energy of the room flow into her. Then slowly she began to play. The first notes were soft and delicate, drawing the audience in. The melody seemed to float through the air, creating a sense of calm and wonder. Each note carried emotion, telling a story that words could not express. The guests listened, captivated by the unexpected beauty and depth of the music. As she played, the young waitress felt herself becoming completely immersed in the performance. She moved with confidence, allowing the music to guide her. The audience was silent, hanging on every note. Some leaned forward, their eyes wide with amazement, while others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Even the most skeptical guests were drawn in, unable to resist the power and emotion of her playing. She had become more than a waitress that night. She was a storyteller, using her piano to communicate with every listener. Throughout the performance, she noticed subtle reactions from the audience. A young boy sat with his mother, eyes fixed on her fingers as they danced across the keys. An older woman smiled quietly, remembering her own youth and the music she had loved. Some of the staff watched from the sidelines, whispering in awe at her skill. She realized that music had the power to connect people, to create shared moments of beauty and emotion that transcended differences. Each note she played built a bridge between herself and everyone in the room. As the performance continued, the young waitress experimented with variations in rhythm and tone, exploring new expressions within familiar melodies. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, yet there was a freedom in the way she played, an unspoken joy that resonated with the audience. Some guests whispered to each other, amazed at how someone so quiet and unassuming could produce such a powerful and moving performance. The music filled the room with energy and emotion, creating a magical atmosphere that lingered long after each note faded. By the end of the evening, the audience was completely captivated. When the final notes lingered in the air, a hush fell over the room before the applause began. The sound was loud and enthusiastic, echoing through the restaurant. Guests rose from their seats, clapping and cheering, some even whistling in admiration. The young waitress felt her heart swell with gratitude and pride. She had once been overlooked, underestimated, and now she was celebrated for her talent and courage. After the performance, several guests approached her, expressing their admiration and curiosity. They asked about her musical background, how long she had been playing, and whether she had considered performing professionally. She answered modestly, grateful for the attention but remaining humble. The manager also came to speak with her, praising her once again and suggesting that she take on more high-profile performances. Her heart raced with excitement and hope, realizing that opportunities she had never imagined were now within reach. Back in the kitchen, her co-workers were buzzing with excitement. They congratulated her, some with wide smiles, others with genuine awe. She felt a sense of belonging and respect, knowing that she had inspired not only the guests but also those around her. The atmosphere of the restaurant had shifted. She was no longer invisible or overlooked. Her talent and courage had changed the way people perceived her, and she felt a growing sense of confidence and purpose. The young waitress reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She remembered the early days, practicing in secret, feeling unnoticed and unappreciated. She recalled the laughter and doubt that had once tried to discourage her. And now, she realized that those moments of challenge had prepared her for this. They had taught her resilience, patience, and the importance of believing in herself, even when others did not. As the evening came to a close, she took a quiet moment alone by the piano, letting the silence settle around her. The room had been transformed by the music, and she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She knew that her performances were more than entertainment. They were a way to connect, to inspire, and to share a piece of herself with the world. Each note she played was a statement of courage, a proof that talent and determination could overcome doubt and skepticism. Walking home that night, she felt a renewed sense of hope and possibility. She thought about the future, the opportunities that awaited, and the lives she could touch with her music. She understood that her journey was only beginning, and that the courage to step forward and share her gift would continue to open doors. She had learned that being true to oneself, embracing one's talent, and facing challenges with determination could lead to extraordinary experiences and connections. The young waitress knew that there would be more obstacles ahead, more moments of doubt and uncertainty, but she felt ready to face them, armed with the knowledge that her music could inspire and captivate. She had turned what had once been a simple act of courage into a path of growth and discovery. Her life had changed in ways she had never imagined, and she was eager to continue exploring the possibilities, sharing her music, and embracing the journey that lay ahead. The young waitress arrived at the restaurant the next day feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves. Her reputation as a talented pianist had begun to spread beyond the regular guests, and she could sense that tonight's event would be different. The restaurant had invited several prominent figures, including people who were well known in the arts and music industry. She felt a wave of anticipation and a little fear, knowing that this audience would be much more critical and observant than the ones before. As she moved through the restaurant, taking care of the guests and setting tables, she noticed the subtle change in the way people looked at her. There were curious glances, smiles, and whispers of admiration. Some guests who had laughed or underestimated her before were now watching her with respect. Her coworkers, too, seemed to be more attentive and eager, excited to see how she would handle such an important performance. She felt a quiet confidence building inside her, knowing that she had prepared well and that her talent was ready to shine. The manager approached her, offering a reassuring smile. "Tonight is special. Just be yourself, and let the music speak for you," he said. She nodded, taking a deep breath. She felt grateful for his support, knowing that his encouragement had played a part in her growth. With her fingers lightly touching the piano keys, she began to warm up, letting the familiar melodies flow through her hands. Each note seemed to calm her nerves and build her confidence. When the event began, the guests settled into their seats, chatting quietly and sipping drinks. There was a buzz of curiosity in the air, a sense of anticipation that made her pulse quicken. As she walked to the grand piano at the center of the room, the murmurs quieted, and all eyes turned to her. She sat down, her fingers hovering over the keys, and took a deep breath. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft and inviting, capturing the attention of everyone in the room. The melody was gentle yet full of emotion, weaving a story that resonated with each listener. Guests leaned forward, their eyes fixed on her fingers as they moved gracefully across the keys. The young waitress lost herself in the music, letting it guide her, expressing feelings and emotions that words could never capture. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an artist sharing a piece of her soul with everyone present. As she continued, the music grew more powerful and expressive. Each chord, each note, carried a story, a message of hope, courage, and determination. The audience was captivated, their earlier curiosity replaced by genuine admiration. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, while others watched intently, amazed by the skill and passion displayed before them. The atmosphere in the restaurant was transformed, filled with a sense of wonder and connection that only music could create. Throughout the performance, the young waitress noticed subtle reactions from the guests. A child sat quietly, eyes wide with amazement, inspired by the elegance and confidence she displayed. An elderly couple held hands, smiling, as the music reminded them of cherished memories. Even the skeptical guests who had come expecting a mediocre performance were now completely absorbed, their doubts replaced by awe. She realized that her music had the power to touch hearts, to create moments of shared humanity that transcended differences. The performance continued, each piece flowing seamlessly into the next. She explored new variations and expressions within familiar melodies, adding depth and nuance that made each song unique. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, yet there was a natural freedom in the way she played, a joy that radiated through every note. Guests whispered to each other, amazed that someone who had been so quietly working in the background could possess such remarkable talent. As the final notes lingered in the air, a hush fell over the room. The audience seemed reluctant to break the silence, as if holding onto the magic of the moment. Then, applause erupted, loud and enthusiastic, echoing through the restaurant. Guests stood, clapping and cheering, some whistling in admiration. The young waitress felt her heart swell with pride and gratitude. She had turned what could have been just another evening into an unforgettable experience, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. After the performance, several guests approached her personally, expressing their admiration and curiosity. They asked about her background, her training, and whether she had considered pursuing music professionally. She answered humbly, grateful for their interest, yet still shy about the attention. Some offered to introduce her to other musicians and influential figures in the industry, seeing the potential for a career that could take her far beyond the restaurant. She listened carefully, her mind buzzing with possibilities and excitement. The manager came over again, his face beaming with pride. "You were incredible tonight," he said. "Everyone is talking about you. You've made a lasting impression, and I believe this is just the beginning." She smiled, feeling a sense of validation and encouragement. The recognition was new and overwhelming, yet it felt natural, a reflection of the hard work, dedication, and courage she had shown. Her talent, once hidden and overlooked, was now shining brightly, and she knew that her life was changing in profound ways. Back in the kitchen, her co-workers were buzzing with excitement, congratulating her and expressing admiration. Some who had been competitive or dismissive before now looked at her with respect and genuine appreciation. She felt a deep sense of belonging and pride, knowing that she had inspired not only the guests but also those around her. The atmosphere in the restaurant had shifted. She was no longer invisible. Her talent, courage, and dedication had changed the way people perceived her, and she felt a growing sense of confidence and purpose. As the evening drew to a close, the young waitress took a quiet moment alone by the piano. The room was empty, the echoes of the performance still lingering in the air. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the days of practicing in secret to performing in front of influential and discerning audiences. She remembered the moments of doubt and laughter that had once tried to hold her back. Now, she realized that those challenges had shaped her, preparing her for this moment of triumph. Walking home that night, she felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. She thought about the future, the opportunities that awaited, and the lives she could touch with her music. She knew that her journey was only beginning, and that the courage to step forward and share her gift would continue to open doors. She had learned that talent, when combined with dedication and bravery, could transform perceptions, inspire others, and create moments of profound connection. The young waitress understood that challenges would continue to come, but she felt ready to face them. Her experiences had taught her resilience, patience, and the importance of believing in herself, no matter what others thought. She had turned fear and doubt into motivation, and her music had become a vehicle for expression, inspiration, and change. She knew that by embracing her talent and sharing it with the world, she could achieve extraordinary things and make a difference in the lives of those who listened. Her story was no longer just about serving tables. It was about courage, passion, and the power of believing in oneself. The young waitress arrived at the restaurant that evening with a mix of excitement and calm determination. Word of her talent had spread, and tonight's audience included not only regular guests but also several influential people in the music world. She felt a flutter of nervousness, but it was different from before. Now, she knew what she was capable of and felt ready to share it with everyone. She moved gracefully through the restaurant, attending to the guests while quietly preparing herself for the performance. The atmosphere had changed from the usual hustle and bustle. There was a sense of anticipation in the air. Her co-workers whispered among themselves, clearly excited and curious. Some had been there from the very beginning, witnessing her quiet dedication and countless hours of practice. They looked at her now with admiration and respect. The manager approached her, giving her a reassuring smile. "Tonight is special," he said. "Just play from your heart. Everyone is ready to listen." She nodded, feeling both grateful and determined. She knew that tonight would mark an important step in her journey. As the event began, the guests settled into their seats, chatting quietly and enjoying the ambience. The lights dimmed slightly, focusing attention on the grand piano at the center of the room. The young waitress walked toward it, each step purposeful and calm. The audience grew silent as she sat down, adjusting the bench and placing her hands gently on the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, drawing in a deep breath, and let the first notes fill the room. The music was soft at first, delicate and inviting, drawing everyone in with its beauty. As she played, the melody began to flow naturally, each note expressing emotion and telling a story. The audience was captivated, some leaning forward in their seats, others closing their eyes to fully immerse themselves in the music. The young waitress felt herself becoming one with the piano, letting her fingers express feelings she had carried for years. Each chord conveyed hope, courage, and resilience, echoing her journey from a quiet, unnoticed worker to a performer who now commanded the attention of an entire room. Throughout the performance, the audience reacted subtly but powerfully. A young child watched her with wide eyes, inspired by her confidence and skill. An elderly man smiled quietly, reminiscing about music from his youth. Guests who had initially doubted her were now fully absorbed, experiencing emotions they hadn't expected to feel from someone who had seemed so ordinary just days before. She realized in that moment how powerful music could be, creating connections and shared experiences that transcended age, status, and expectation. The young waitress continued, exploring different melodies and harmonies, adding depth and nuance to each piece. Her fingers moved with precision and elegance, yet there was freedom in her expression, a joy that radiated through every note. The audience could feel the passion and dedication behind each movement, witnessing not only skill but also a story of perseverance and courage. The room was filled with an energy that seemed almost tangible, a quiet magic that only great music could create. As the performance reached its peak, the audience became completely immersed. Some guests whispered to each other in admiration, amazed at how someone so humble could create such a profound impact. Others were visibly moved, some wiping away tears quietly, touched by the beauty and emotion conveyed through the music. The young waitress felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew that every note she played was reaching hearts and making a difference. Her courage to step forward had transformed not only her own life but also the experience of everyone listening. When the final notes lingered in the air, a hush fell over the room. The audience seemed reluctant to break the spell, as if wanting the moment to last a little longer. Then, applause erupted, loud and enthusiastic, echoing through the restaurant. Guests rose from their seats, clapping, cheering, and some whistling in admiration. The young waitress felt her heart swell with pride and gratitude. She had turned what could have been an ordinary evening into something unforgettable, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. After the performance, several guests approached her, offering words of praise and encouragement. They asked about her musical background and whether she had considered pursuing professional opportunities. She answered humbly, grateful for their attention yet feeling quietly proud of how far she had come. Some offered introductions to other musicians and influential figures, recognizing the potential for a career that could extend beyond the restaurant. She listened carefully, her mind alive with new possibilities and hope for the future. The manager approached once more, his face full of pride. "You've done something remarkable," he said. "Everyone is talking about you. This is just the beginning." She smiled, a mix of humility and joy washing over her. The recognition was a new experience, yet it felt deserved, a reflection of years of dedication, hard work, and courage. She realized that her journey had transformed her life, opening doors she had never imagined and giving her confidence to embrace new opportunities. Back in the kitchen, her co-workers congratulated her with smiles and admiration. Some who had doubted her earlier were now full of respect. She felt a deep sense of belonging and fulfillment, knowing that she had inspired not only the guests but also those around her. The restaurant had become more than a place of work. It had become a stage where she could share her passion and connect with others through music. She understood that her talent, combined with courage and dedication, had the power to change perceptions and create lasting memories. As the night drew to a close, the young waitress took a moment alone by the piano. The room was quiet, filled only with the lingering echoes of her performance. She reflected on her journey, from the early days of practice and doubt to the moments of recognition and admiration. She thought about how far she had come and the obstacles she had overcome. She realized that every challenge had prepared her for this moment, teaching her resilience, patience, and the importance of believing in herself. Walking home that night, she felt a deep sense of hope and determination. She thought about the future and the opportunities that awaited her. She knew that her journey was only beginning, and that her courage to step forward and share her gift would continue to open doors. She had learned that talent, when nurtured and embraced, could transform not only her own life but also the lives of those who experienced it. Her story was no longer about being overlooked or underestimated. It was about courage, passion, and the power of believing in oneself. The young waitress understood that there would always be challenges ahead, moments of doubt, and new obstacles to face. But she felt ready to confront them, knowing that her music could inspire, connect, and create joy. She had discovered that the simplest acts of bravery, like stepping up to a piano, could lead to extraordinary change. Her journey had taught her that when talent meets courage, amazing things could happen. She smiled to herself, knowing that the future was full of promise, and that she would continue to share her gift with the world, one note at a time.